Okay, I think we can start. Okay, let's give it one more minute. Let's start 05. Hertega. Okay, perfect. So welcome everybody and good morning to all. We are pleased to have you here with us. We will be discussing with a few of our colleagues. Just as a reminder, this is live and it's a live session, and it's also going to be recorded, so you can also watch it later on if you want. As an introduction, I'm Theo Koutsastavros. I am with CrowdPolicy. We are part of the INFINITECH project. It's an H2020 project around financial and banking applications, where we will be discussing today around data management, and we will be seeing some INFINITECH case studies, and we will also be seeing the things around that. So how you can be sure to make sure that everything is in place, how big corporations are using this, and we will also be watching some of the actual use cases running in the FinTech. So without further ado, we have more than a few speakers for today, and we'll be starting with Ms. Vasiliki Diamantopoulou. Hello, good morning, Ms.
Good morning.
Good
morning to everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you for being here with us. Just as an introduction, I want to mention that you're an assistant professor on the Department of Information and Communication System Engineering and the School of Engineering for the University of AGN. And you will be talking about the rights of data subjects in the information society and how this applies to the momentum, let's say, on the banking sector. So it's going to be a very interesting topic, and we're looking forward. Yes, I'm sure it will. Whenever you're ready, you can start sharing your screen and we can start. Thank you for doing this.
Okay, do you see my my screen?
Yes, we can, and the floor is yours.
So thank you very much. Again, thank you very much for the invitation. Actually, as you mentioned, I'm a professor on information systems, specialized in privacy domain, privacy sector. So today we will discuss about the regulation, the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, which of course, as you all may know, is one of the most robust global privacy laws in effect today. It has been created, of course, by the European Union, and since 2018, it outlines certain obligations that organizations must follow. So in this presentation, we will discuss various peculiarities and issues regarding the application of the GDPR in the banking sector, specifically regarding the data subjects' rights. When I don't know if you all are familiar with the terminology that the GDPR uses. When we say data subjects, we are referring to any individual, either he or she is a person, a citizen, a customer, a patient, and so on. It might be in several, GDPR has application in several domains where personal data is processed, is being processed. Let me change the slide. So banks have already in place strict procedures and organizational measures that they follow. This is something that we have to take into account when we are discussing about the relationship between the GDPR and in the bank sector. So most of the time, banks are certified by, for example, any ISO certification or other regulatory frameworks. And that means that on the one hand, they might be already to some extent GDPR compliant, especially if they are certified with ISO 27000. And on the other hand, they have become experienced because of this long history of meeting strict privacy and data protection requirements that have been set by financial regulators. So these strict frameworks is not something new for the bank sector. Therefore, what we can derive from all this history is that their strategic approach and the detailed procedures they follow are likely to be more mature than in comparison with other companies in other sectors. However, in this slide, you can see some challenges that the bank sector has faced so far. So despite that banks are generally better prepared than firms in other sectors, financial firms have in many cases found GDPR compliance as a challenge because of its broad scope. GDPR has a broad scope, as we mentioned in the beginning, and it applies in any sector. GDPR also affects many departments, many IT systems, and a lot of people that are involved in such processes, in such flows, data flows. Particular areas of difficulty, of course, include managing the data asset inventories that have been, how can I say, managed by the banks, consolidating, of course, vast amounts of data into centralized pools, and complying with the way that the GDPR has been interpreted in different ways by some EU member states. It's a country. Despite GDPR tries to provide a holistic approach towards preservation of privacy, the interpretation of the regulation in a national level might be different in various countries. However, what the surveys reveal is that financial service consumers are much more aware of their data rights. So the GDPR is one of the most robust global privacy laws in effect today, as we mentioned before. However, it raises a lot of issues to be tackled regarding preservation of privacy within an organization. And in this presentation, we will focus on the data subjects' rights, with respect, of course, to the protection of data subjects' personal data. Here in this slide, we see the 8 data subjects' rights, which have one common goal, to give to the individuals the control over their personal data. This is the main scope of those rights. It outlines, the GDPR outlines 8 fundamental data subject rights, plus some other rights that are derived from other articles within the text of the GDPR, such as the right to the consent, the right to the information, to the notification, when a data breach is occurred, and so on. But these are the rights that are clearly mentioned in the text of the GDPR. And we will briefly discuss these 8 rights in the next slides. So the first right, the right to be informed, refers to the information that data subjects can gain regarding the processing of their personal data, even if the subjects have provided the data on their own, or if the data, the organization, an organization has collected the data from other sources. All this information needs to be communicated in plain and clear language. This is a clear direction that all organizations should follow. As researchers, we might, you might know, we all know that interpreting legal documents into clear and understandable language, it's not that easy. So this is something that GDPR imposes to all the controllers. The main issue, as we mentioned before, regarding the satisfaction of this right is the creation of the inventory where the data may reside. It's rather what we comment here for the bank sector, that it might be trivial for them to create forms in order to communicate with the data subjects, in order to provide them this all the necessary information, but as a certain banking institution may have a broad scope, as we mentioned before, as many departments might involve, such as the administration, the legal department, the databases department. All the challenge here is to create and maintain the appropriate data inventory in order to find the information upon request of the data by the data subject. Next, we have the right to access, the second right. In essence, here we have the same challenges as in the previous right, the right to be informed. So the banking organizations again have to document their procedures, which is also, as we understand, it's not a difficult task for such organizations because of the strict frameworks that they work so far. So that they will have all the appropriate records and flows of personal data processing. So in order for them to be able to provide this information to data subjects, so the right to information and the right to access lies on the management of the appropriate management of the data that the banks keep for the data subjects. Next, the third right is the right to rectification. This right specifically for the bank sector, we may all have seen in action when, for example, you visit a bank and you want to receive a service. This service might not be provided to you unless you updated or completed or corrected the personal data that the bank keeps for you. So it is something that we all might have seen in action. The advanced IT systems at banking sector already has in place, and the procedures make the satisfaction of this task not so much of a challenge, at least in comparison with other sectors where information might be fragmented in various different systems. So again, the key to success is to have a very well-structured data management inventory in order to be able to identify the information of every data subject. Next, the fourth right is the right to be forgotten, also known as the right to erasure. which allows individuals to ask for the personal data to be deleted. This is a right whose satisfaction is perhaps more difficult for the banking sector in regards to other sectors, and this is because banks have already in place automated procedures for keeping data in multiple instances and in various places in order to guarantee the continuity, the business continuity in data and in generally the service provision. So it is something that it is a bit tricky, let's say. However, there are situations, we have to have in our mind that there are situations that organizations can decline the request, for instance, for reasons in the public interest or compliance with other legal obligations. So a data subject, when they request for this, to exercise this right, has to be sure that this right can be satisfied as well, because they have to have in their mind that there are some other regulations that are put in place and have to be respected by the bank. Next, we have the right to data portability. Data portability, we have to mention here that data portability is one of the novelties among the other data subject rights. So in order for the controller to fulfill the obligation towards this, towards the satisfaction of this right, technical measures should be implemented in order to enable this transfer. We are discussing about the transfer of the personal data of a subject, for example, between a bank and another financial institution. So if this data is in a structured and commonly used and machine-readable format, the data controller, in our case the bank, is obliged to transfer this data, but only the data that the subject has provided, for example, contact details, not any other processing data that have been derived by the bank, by the specific bank. So again, it is a tricky point in order to identify the specific data that a bank is obliged to transfer. A lot of data, a lot of a lot of issues. So the next slide is about the right to restrict processing. So individuals there can request an organization to limit the way it uses the personal data for them. So the satisfaction of this right, we could say that it is, I mean, in a broad sense, it is similar with the right to erasure that we saw before. Once again, here the situation, here we have a situation where organizations can decline this request because there might be other legal frameworks that have to be that are applied and have to be respected and satisfied. For example, to mention here that a bank should also refer to a service which is called anti-money laundering. So if they have to keep the data in order to satisfy these legal requirements, this the individuals should be informed that this right cannot be satisfied. The right to object processing, as we said before, it is an additional right that is imposed by the GDPR, which is about the objection of the processing. Here, the crucial part lies in the justification of why the processing should stop. So the the data subject should clearly define the reasons behind this objection. Okay, for example, it is easy to object and stop and put a stop in the processing when it is for marketing purposes in the bank sector. So again, the bank should be able to easily, let's say, identify if this right can be satisfied or not. And again, going back in the management of the data, it is something that it can be easily conducted if the data has been put in the appropriate format, in the appropriate places, and so on. And finally, the final right of the GDPR is the right to object to automated processing. So here the data subjects have the right not to be subject to automated decision making if this processing is produced by automated means. So the GDPR here introduces strict rules when it comes to the processing of the personal data without any human involvement. It is worth mentioning here that the European Banking Federation mentions that some banks are concerned towards the satisfaction of this right, that tough rules have been imposed on the use of artificial intelligence for data processing, and this action could have a negative impact on business operations. So it is something that it has to be taken into consideration, because it, let's say, we could say that it puts some barriers in the innovation that the banks might want to conduct. So individuals, on the other side, have the right not to be subject to a decision which produces legal effects concerning them or significantly affecting them, and which is based on the automated processes, such as their performance on the work, the reliability they have, and so on. Again, banks should follow specific procedures in order to be able to respond to these rights upon request. Finally, here I have included some generic information of exercising the rights, the data subject's rights, which also applies to the banking sector. So the data subjects can exercise those rights simply by contacting the bank, the responsible bank. And on the other hand, the banks should take the appropriate measures to provide the necessary information and communication that is related to this processing. And the data subjects, the data controllers, are obliged to respond to these requests using clear language. And this response should be conducted within a specific time frame, which is the 30 days. So thank you very much for your attention. In this, I just finished all the information that are related to the rights that individuals have. As a final comment, I would like to say that a bank is a complex organization and processes large volumes of personal data. This should be taken into account when we are discussing about the bank sector. And also, not only they process a large volume of data, but they also have large number of different purposes, scopes. So what is needed is an orchestration of a large number of organizational units and employees and people in order to ensure that all the necessary changes have done contribute to the common goal, which is, of course, is the compliance with the General Data Protection Regulation. Thank you very much for your attention again, and I'm here to discuss whatever you want.
Thank
I hope
you
this
for the
information wasn't that much for you, and try not to say many details from the legal point of view, but to bring to the discussion the technical issues and aspects that consist a challenge for the bank sector.
Thank you, Ms. Yamadopoulos, for everything. Just wanted, I don't think there were too many because, you know, GDPR, like the framework is so big, so you have to go through each one of these.
Exactly.
And it was a great introduction. Please feel free to share your questions here on the chat with us if you have any questions. I just wanted to ask something, you know, from a practical perspective. If I come across a company or a bank, probably not a bank, but you know, a smaller company, I guess, that doesn't apply to their operations all these legal things that they need to do, what can I do as a consumer to make sure, you know, that they can somehow abide by the law?
What you can do is to apply to the Data Protection Authority, to the National Data Protection Authority, and to in order to refer these issues, so that this SME, this organization that hasn't applied any data protection processes to make them to be compliant at the end of the day, let's say. So what an individual has to do is to apply, to mention this event, this issue, this big issue, in my opinion, to the National Data Protection Authority. This is the main weapon, let's say, that we have in our hands as individuals, or to communicate with the data protection officer of this company. If they are not compliant with the GDPR, they probably don't have any specialized person in order to fulfill those requirements. So what we have to do is to declare, to mention this event to any National Data Protection Authority. Yes. And they respond very well.
Okay,
as far as the Greek DPA is concerned.
The problem is that you know, we are maybe like 3-4 years now into the GDPR. It was 5 years. It was 1st of January 2019. Okay, or 5 years, maybe something like that. It's I still see some SMEs doing that, and you know, I was always thinking, what can I actually do? Which is yeah, it's a pity actually. But yeah, thank you for that. I will keep that in mind. And you know, as long as you say that they actually do good work in protecting the civil rights, it's actually very important. You know, there are so many discussions around data protection, and hopefully everybody can.
So many discussions. As we said, GDPR has a broad scope with a lot of issues that has put on a table, and of course it wasn't. It wasn't. This should we have to discuss in the past tense. It wasn't that easy for the organizations to be compliant with the GDPRs, especially SMEs, because they didn't have the culture of the protection of personal data. I mean, you remember that during 2018, we were receiving emails from all the SMEs, all the firms that we had bought something some years ago, probably, that they were asking for the consent in order for them to be able to keep our data. They thought that it was if we were decline this this communication, they thought that it would be bad for them to because they would eliminate, they would minimize the databases with the customers they had. But what they finally realized is that GDPR is here in order to make things more clear and better, at least. I mean, you now that when an SME, when a bank or whatever institution, organization, and so on is compliant with the GDPR, has a better knowledge on where the data that they process, the data that they keep is located, is stored. This data is updated. It's very important that this data is updated. They have clear scopes on why do I need this data. This is also important. Otherwise, you are keeping data just to be sure that when I need it, I can find them. This is not an appropriate strategy.
I agree, and it's also from a business perspective. It doesn't make sense to have, you know, an email that someone bought from me like 10 years ago. I don't really have anything. It's not the best practice when it comes to, you know, the market.
Exactly. That's why in the beginning GDPR, what the organization, the feelings of the organization was that GDPR was here to make them stop the processes, their business processes, but hopefully not. They realized that GDPR, not all of them, as I mentioned again, only the ones who are compliant with the GDPR, they realized that GDPR is a regulation that the main goal is to make things more clear. To put this in a sentence with a few words.
Yes, I 100% agree. And now this reminds me, when GDPR came in place 5 years ago, you know, the difference between Europe and I guess Americas, like USA, they were, yes, and probably that's my question actually. How more tough, or, you know, how more strict is GDPR compared to the other areas of the world? And do they plan to, you know, make more advances in how they have their own regulatory systems? Let's say Australia, Americas. If I want to market I guess if I want to market my company to the US, it's much more easier for me because I can, I guess, buy a list and send emails and that's it. Do you think this is going to change, or what is the view or the trends in this area?
Since we are living in we are facing the globalization, of course, the boundaries of an organization doesn't stop on national boundaries. So in the beginning, before the GDPR, the regulation of the United States, as you mentioned, for example, were not that strict as the European ones. But since they want to continue having exchange data with the European citizens, with the data that European organizations produce, okay, they have to follow this regulation. They have to also declare that one of the I just remember that one of the requirements of the GDPR is that for the transnational transferring of personal data, the recipient of the data should declare that they have taken all the technical and organizational measures in order to protect the data. So only with this requirement, they are obliged to be compliant again as European organizations
I see.
This is
Yes.
something that the GDPR proactively has put in the text in order seamlessly, let's say, to make all the universe to be compliant with the privacy requirements.
That's nice to hear. And yeah, thank you for that. One last question. What is the future of GDPR? I guess, some mistakes that maybe happened or some new things that would be added to this. I think there is something new coming I don't know when, but the new section. I don't know if there is something official, but I guess there were some things that would be need to be changed or need to be added or removed. Is there anything that we should know that is coming?
Not
If any.
literally in the near future, I don't think so, because as we said, GDPR has a lot of issues that should be taken into consideration by the organizations. So I think that in my opinion, the organizations around Europe, let's say, for the beginning, they need time in order to apply those measures and to see the effects of those measures. So I suppose that the European Commission should firstly see how this regulation will work on practice, and then they will proceed probably with various amendments if necessary, in order to probably to make things more restrict, because there are some, let's say, frames that organizations can exploit, and not to be in order not to be compliant with some requirements. But things need time in order to be mature and to assess them and to find to proceed with any amendments.
Perfect. Thank you for that as well. Hopefully, SMEs and organizations will follow suit because it's very important for everyone. And as
yes,
you explained, yes, please.
In my essence, people are more aware now after 5 years that we are talking about personal data again and again. When you want when you want to request a service, they ask you to sign a paper. They say it's about personal data. Okay, so only in this, taking only this into consideration, people are getting more aware. So if they see something that is not appropriate, let's say, they by themselves object to this process, and they will of course, they will declare their disappointment. So we have also to take into account that people are getting more and more aware in this situation.
That's true. And one comment on this, we're working a lot with startups, younger people that are trying to build their own thing, and they are all aware of this. And it is actually one of the first questions they ask.
Questions, exactly.
Yes. Exactly. How can I be sure that I am compliant with GDPR? And that's a good trend, for all the new things that are coming.
It's also some two requirements of the GDPR, which is the data protection by design and the data protection by default. And it is really positive that you mentioned startup organizations. So they want to build a solid framework and then to continue with the business aspects, the business procedures and so on. They have to fulfill this requirement, the privacy, the preservation of privacy, the data protection, and then to continue with the businesses. Yes,
exactly. And some of the tools they're using actually have this embedded somehow. So, this is actually, it's an ecosystem type of thing. That's the general comment here. But yeah, thank you so much. It's so interesting. I think we can keep discussing this.
I hope so.
Unfortunately, we have to to move to the next. But yes, I will say to everyone out there who would like to contact you if they have more questions, I guess you're happy to discuss with anyone.
Of course, I'm
And
happy to discuss anything. Yes.
perfect. So find Ms. Diamantopoulou on LinkedIn, ask her anything, find us or any other. Just let's make this conversation and help everybody be compliant, because this is the best we can do for everyone.
It is an ongoing process, and it's not something that stops on a presentation, of course.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ms. Diamantopoulou.
And since you are developing solutions, technical solutions for anonymization, as I remember correctly from the agenda of today, today's webinar, it's really important to know that the technical solutions that you provide might be useful both for the bank sector and for other SMEs, because this is, in my opinion, this is also another challenge, that tools are not all of them appropriate for every organization. So this is also a tricky point for the organizations, because when they want to be compliant, they don't know which tool to choose in order for them to incorporate it in their business processes.
Yes, it's a process, as you said, and hopefully things will get easier and more clear.
Hope so.
And yes,
researchers are here, technicians are here, so
exactly. That's actually something great that you said, because next topic is around this.
Yes,
so you gave me the way to lead forward the conversation. Thank you again for that. Really appreciate it. And
thank you very much.
We will be in touch.
Of course, I'm here. I will stay here to see the next presentations as well.
Perfect. Thank you. So for our next topic, we will be discussing with Ms. Sabina Prodinsnik from GSI. Hi, Sabina. I don't know if you can hear us.
Yes, hi, hello. I'm actually from Bank of Slovenia, and we are one of the end users of Pseudo anonymization tool, which was developed from GSI. And I will give the floor to Filip Kuprivec from GSI.
Yes, sorry for that. Hi, Philip.
No problem. Hello.
Hi, we can hear you very well. And the floor is yours. You will be discussing some things around, as we said, the anonymized tools, anonymization tools. And we're looking forward to see how this works. That's a big word. I cannot even pronounce it. So the floor is yours. And thank you for the presentation.
Okay, so hi, I'm Philip from the JSI Institute. So this is joint work with JSI that was developing the technology, and Bank of Slovenia that was essentially the first user and the main user the pseudo-anonymization tool was developed for. But during the course of the project and the pilot phase, we discovered that all other external partners we included, so the Office for Prevention of Money Laundering and Bankar, the main company that essentially runs the interbank transactions in Slovenia, were also able to use this tool, and it was pretty nicely integrated in their workflow. So we started as a totally pilot project with Bank of Slovenia to ensure legal and compliance, that we had a proper workflow, proper anonymization procedures, but we were able to test all these, all the features developed, and at the end we had a working Docker image that was successfully used to anonymize data on other levels and send it to Bank of Slovenia, where we conglomerated this data and were able to conduct a full analysis. So it was a really nice example of a good cooperation between partners inside the project, and also extending this knowledge and extending the product to the outside partners and be able to test it during the course of the project. So why pseudo-anonymization? The pseudo-anonymization tool, it's not really an anonymization tool, because we're not fully anonymizing the users or fully anonymizing some specific user identification data. We're essentially anonymizing it every time in the same way. Why this is important? It's important that we anonymize bank account numbers, that we anonymize the names of the companies, the VAT names, the VAT numbers of the companies, and also the personal identification data of both companies and people. but we need to ensure that same companies, let's say, anonymize to the same anonymized version, to the same hash every time, because that only with that kind of assurance, we can ensure that ingesting data through time, so ingesting data not in a batch fashion, but in a stream-like fashion, enables us to upgrade our models and to work on a database that is being updated in a continuous manner. So the first thing that we needed to assert was the fact that all the anonymization data should be safe and sound, but also to ensure that different same companies would always, so independent of time, random values, random seeds used on the computer, not in the pseudonymization tools, hash or anonymize to the same tool. So that's why pseudonymization. It's not really a proper anonymization. But the main purpose of the service was to mask the personal information, so be it VAT numbers, identification numbers, IBAN numbers, to be informative enough for analysis, so to anonymize to the same way and not to lose too much data, but to be able to pass security tests and to be able to pass legal and compliance tests to ensure that there is no easy or there's no non-difficult way to kind of get backwards. So what we had to develop, we developed a service that supports different types of conversions between different field types. So the first thing we need to anonymize are IBAN fields, so the account numbers, and they have to be anonymized in a one-to-one fashion. So one IBAN should always anonymize to the same way, depending on the hash and the block cipher function and the salt tier. So we are able to tweak the parameters depending how we cooperate with different partners, but just sharing the hash and the pseudo anonymizer allows us to recreate the results and be able to merge the different data sets together and do analysis on the whole data set. Then we have big fields, so the bank identification data. We also have to anonymize this to prevent any backdoor problems that may arise because we have too many information on our graph and we might be able to de-anonymize it. And again, the big fields should be anonymized in the same way as account numbers, so they need to have one-to-one mapping. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to really combine and compare the data. Apart from that, we also developed an ability to anonymize or pseudo-anonymize and noise to add noise to numeric and timestamp fields. So if we're getting a bunch of data from external providers, it's important to not get the same number every time. So not to get the full transaction information, but to get a transaction information that is good enough while not being able to de-anonymize it in an easy way or being able to uniquely identify it in a non-anonymized graph. So that's why the pseudo-anonymizer also allows for a numeric and timestamp data type, which essentially takes the numeric value and adds some rounding and includes some noise based on pseudo-anonymizer configuration. And in this way still preserves the practically full information about transaction. So we still have the one-to-one anonymization between the recipient and the sender, but we also have an additional noise field that prevents going backwards, even if the user or God forbid an attacker would to acquire a full database and be able to pretty much do anything. Given in that way, they would essentially still need to solve the graph isomorphism problem. This works both with timestamps, this works both with numeric values and with timestamps when we are able to essentially anonymize data in a way that add noise and anonymize data so that we can shift the time a few days up and down, but still present the anonymizer with a limit when we cannot go outside of some sanity ranges. So because month is an important part of our analysis, an important unit of our analysis, we are able to instruct the anonymizer to not go over the end of the month as to not lose an additional information about in which month the transaction was done, but still be able to move within small ranges within the month. So this way preventing the easy de-anonymization. Service is packed as a Docker machine uploaded to the INFINITECH marketplace, and it can be used totally independently. The service will demo it a bit later. The service is essentially a Docker container running JavaScript application that requests HTTP post request to a specific address, so it listens at a specific port. It receives a file with data, and a file containing the instructions how to anonymize. So all these base units, all the noise levels, which fields to anonymize, which fields to leave unanonymized. And we've also included some additional sanity checks. So for IBAN fields, we also do an additional check to see if this field conforms to the IBAN specification, because this information is lost after the anonymization, but can still be transferred. So essentially anonymizer can be instructed to anonymize the account number, but still output a Boolean information, yes, no, indicating that this account number seems like a normal account number. So I don't know, starts with 2 letters and 2 numbers, and it's not some random chunk of word that might be inputted by a mistake or anything. And this can be used in further analysis without revealing any necessary information. And the application is provided as a Docker image, uploaded to a Docker Hub, and works there. And as said before, we've tested this with external partners, and they've been pretty happy about it. I think we've exchanged a few rounds of data exchange between external partners and Bank of Slovenia, and successfully integrated this external data, pseudo-anonymized, totally not on our servers, just got the anonymized version of data and was easily integrated into our existing toolset and toolbox. So this is just a simple architecture diagram. So the user is able to make a HTTP post with a flow file, so the information how the pseudonymization should go, and the data file that can contain a bunch of information. I think we were anonymizing upwards of 1 billion transactions in a batch, and it went smoothly. Then the users just call pseudo-anonymize with those 2 files. The flow is processed, and according to the flow, the data is then pseudo-anonymized. We support multiple different hashing algorithms from bcrypt, SHA, SHA-256, and all that. They can be set up in the flow file. And then we return an HTTP response with the status if everything went all right, and pseudo-anonymized data that is essentially pseudo-anonymized according to the flow provided. So that's it. So additional features that are maybe important. So users are able to specify the round interval for both numeric and timestamp fields. So we can round specific transactions to a specific degree. We can add some noise. So we add standard deviation. We currently use the Gaussian distribution, but this is pluggable. So this is to disable easy way of getting back to the original transaction, or to disable so-called gas griefing attack. And then we just sample a new number. We support a bunch of encryption functions. So AHS, Blowfish, SHA, MD5, they're all configurable. I think to be noticed, this pseudo-anonymizer is not meant to be cryptographically secure. The main idea is to just provide a difficult one-way function from initial unanonymized data to the anonymized data that is available for analysis and can be viewed by, not really by an outside people, but can be viewed by people without high level security clearance, or by people that might not be able to access multiple data sets. We also provide some specific encryption function are parameterized. So we provide salt and cost level for a Blowfish, so that we can further enhance the security and provide additional identification. And essentially, external partners use the Blowfish algorithm, which provided salt that was shared over a secure channel and provided cost that was shared over a secure channel to anonymize data and push it over. And as said before, we also provide a BIC and IBAN identification so that we can quickly check the validity inside the pseudo-anonymizer and just output both the IBAN field, so the account number, the anonymized account number, and the validity of such account number. So if the field is invalid, we just provide information, and this can be used further in the analysis. Okay, so, and now let's see a simple demo. Just gonna move out. Okay, so as said before, pseudo-anonymizer is essentially just a Docker container. We pull it from a Docker Hub. The container is pretty small, essentially just contains a basic Unix distribution plus Node.js runtime, and it runs. And what do we do? So it's running, it was set up 2 hours ago. It's forwarding the port and essentially querying the anonymizer means to just send a simple post request, in our case, the local host, the pseudo-anonymized URL with provided flow data that you can see on the left, I'll show it, and with provided data file. So data file is essentially a list of JSON objects. We also support CSV values, so you can both supply a CSV file or a JSON file, but essentially it's a list of JSON objects with standard JSON objects. So this is an account number, some identifier for that account number, a date of payment and payment amount, and the same here. So we also support decimal values for payments, although we are not that happy with them being included. So this is a simple data flow file. So as said before, upwards of 1 billion transactions can be processed in a single data file with only a small Docker image. And this is the flow supplied to this account, to this file. So essentially what we're saying, okay, so this field should be is a type of VBAN, so that the inner checks are done. The bcrypt should be used, and this is the salt provided. So that's it. And this field, the payment amount, is a type of numeric. It should be rounded with this specific round interval, and please add this specific level of noise. And also date is a timestamp. You should also round it, and this is the round and noise interval. And we're also able to process multiple date formats because we should be able to switch between different internationalized dates, non-internationalized dates, and dates that may not conform to any of those specifications. And to run this, we essentially just invoke this Python script. Let's firstly see it here without the. We'll just run it, and the output is a simple JSON, which is quite difficult to read. So let's send it to JSON. Let's send it to a file. Oh, I see. So the file is locked. Let me just use a new file. Okay. Here, let's just format it so we can see what happened. So essentially what the pseudo-anonymizer does, it takes the initial data and it anonymizes the specific fields. The unanonymized field, so in this case, the receiver is left unanonymized because it was not specified in the flow. And the dates, if you remember the data from before, the dates are also, some noise is added to the dates and also some noise is added to the value. So, and it also checks that this thing conforms to the IBAN specification. So in our case, just put this up there. So you can see that in the first case, so this conforms to the IBAN specification, but in the second one, as we use the dashes to separate them, this does not conform to the IBAN specification and is noted here, but the thing is still anonymized, so we don't get any additional information. Okay, so that's pretty much it from my side. So thank you for listening, and that's the pseudo-anonymizer. And yes, as I said before, it's available on Docker Hub. It has been really thoroughly tested with additional partners, and the data was successfully imported into our screening and risk assessment tool. And it was quite useful to have a really larger amount of data combined and pseudo-anonymized so that we're really able to use it. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Philip. That's very interesting. And is this, do you have a working case for this right now? Is it in beta testing? What is the current stage?
We have a working case. So the pilot is using the data that is pseudo-anonymized by the Bankart and the Office of Money Laundering Prevention, sent to Bank of Slovenia and ingested there. So we're updating the data flow so this can be done continuously and not in a batch-based version.
Great to hear that. One more question. Feel free to ask your questions for Philip as well. But are there any other cases other than the banking sector that you can see, you know, this something that could be very interesting or useful?
Well, essentially, we're anonymizing a bunch of JSON objects. So pretty much anything that that should anonymize JSON objects, that should anonymize some data with a one-to-one correspondence, is a useful working example. Maybe outside of banking number, I don't know, some sort of advertisement. If you have some unique user identifier that should not be known, but you still need to uniquely identify the same objects in your database, that's pretty useful. So I don't know, you have a user with a full name and social security number, and you don't want this social security number to be shown, but you still want the user to be uniquely identified across your platform. This pseudo anonymizer would still work, and just adding an additional field to say, okay, check that this social security number conforms to some standard, and output this check without revealing the full social security number would be pretty useful and enable further analysis to be powerful.
I see. So just as an example, this could be, I just heard that Facebook Meta, for example, is building, this verification profiles. Is this a use case that they could be, or I guess they are using, because they're going to use like national IDs or something like that?
Yeah, so yeah, that's a perfect example. So they have national IDs that uniquely identify users, but those unique identifiers are, let's say, forbidden to be touched or forbidden to be seen. So in that case, you just kind of map them over to something that is illegible to an analyst, but still provides a one-to-one correspondence. Yeah, that's a perfect use case and perfect example.
Perfect. Okay, thank you so much for this. We wish you all the best with this project, and hopefully more and more even SMEs will start using this, because it's I think it's an essential part of the data protection. Thank you for your hard work, and yeah, feel free, if you have any more questions for Philip, reach out to ask. Thank you, Philip. So we can go ahead with our next speaker. We will be staying in the same topic. So we'll be discussing about now anonymization tools with Ms. Ines Ortega Fernandez from Gradient. Hi, Ines. Can you hear us?
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for the nice presentation that I know that you will be presenting to us. So feel free to share your screen.
I think, yeah, this one.
Yes, it's loading. Perfect. We can see your screen. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm Ines Ortega. I'm the technical manager for data analytics and AI at Gradient, and we are working in the INFINITECH project developing a data anonymization tool. So as you know, because the previous talks in this webinar were very specific about the GDPR. So the data that organizations handle is nowadays increasing. So it's difficult to be compliant with regulations like the GDPR. So while this information is essential for business to provide services and gather valuable analytical information, it also poses a significant risk for data breaches and privacy violations. So data anonymization is not the same as pseudo-anonymization as in the previous case. So it's the process of transforming all your data in such a way that prevents re-identification of the data subjects. So you have to ensure that the resultant data cannot be traced back to a specific individual. By anonymizing data, the organizations can reduce the risk of data breaches, maintain the user's privacy, and be compliant with data privacy laws and regulations. So it has many benefits, but also has a main problem that if you, by anonymizing data, you are transforming it and you can lose a lot of analytical value. So you have to do it carefully if you want to use the data afterwards. So related to the GDPR, so it's in place since May 2018, and it has one of the principles that were explained before, is security and privacy by design. And one of the techniques that you can use to achieve that is data anonymization. I'm gonna go fast on the GDPR stuff because we already covered that in the previous talks, and I will jump directly to some data anonymization techniques. So you can classify them in two main groups. The first one is randomization, which involves changing the attributes in a data set, so they are less precise. The simplest form is noise addition, which consists of adding statistical noise in a controlled way, and keeping usually the distribution of the data. And the permutation techniques consist on mixing attribute values in a table in such a way that some of them are artificially linked to different data subjects. So it's basically mixing data from one subject to another. So you cannot really tell which one, so you cannot trace back to the original person. So for instance, you can swap the age of person A with the age of person B. So if you only know the age of person A, you cannot, by its name, you cannot get the other information from it. And on the other hand, differential privacy generates like an anonymized version of a data set. And whenever you query a database, like get me the median of the age of all the subjects in a database, if you query multiple times the database, you cannot infer information from these queries, because in each of them, differential privacy techniques will be adding an amount of random noise to the query to protect the user's privacy. And the second group of techniques is generalization. You have three main techniques: K-anonymity, L-diversity, and T-closeness. In the first case, privacy is achieved by grouping users together or attributes from at least K individuals, so you cannot distinguish them. L-diversity extends this idea so you can also ensure that each aggregate attribute will contain at least L different individuals. And T-closeness also improves the previous technique to preserve the original data distribution. So the application of these techniques, of course, improves the privacy of the individuals in your data set, but on the way, you will be losing data utility. So the key to achieve effective anonymization and be able to use your data is to find this trade-off between the privacy you gain and the utility or analytical value you lose in the data. So in the case of big data scenarios, which are very common, and the most common nowadays, data anonymization faces additional challenges. First, due to the large volume of the data, the computational efficiency may be a critical issue. So when you select a particular anonymization technique, you will have to pay attention to this and take into account the data volume you will be handling. Aside from the computational issues, the variety of the data also plays an important role, since most of the current algorithms that can be applied to preserve privacy, like clustering, are designed for homogeneous data. And if your data is changing over time, you will have to adapt the algorithm, and you cannot treat the data in the same way all the time. And also, like classical techniques like K-anonymity needs to be adapted to big data scenarios, mainly because you won't have the entire data set all of the time. So your data is arriving in portions, and you cannot really ensure that you cannot guarantee K-anonymity in all the batches of the data, and you have to use other approaches more sophisticated. And also, these real-time constraints are usually very common in big data scenarios. So making a prior analysis of your data set is very difficult if your data is arriving in real time. So here at Gradient, we are developing a data anonymization tool within the INFINITECH project. So we follow a risk-driven approach to data anonymization to help organizations be compliant with the GDPR and elaborate first anonymized versions of their data sets, and also have an accountability of the process that they took. So first, we are starting an analysis phase where different data anonymization operations are defined. It's like a recipe, like you tell the tool all the techniques that you want to try out. And you define a set of privacy and utility metrics to measure how all these operations are affecting your data. So the tool computes all the possible combinations of these anonymization operations, applies them to the data, and computes the metrics in its time. So we present the metrics and the resultant data to the user, so they can visualize it and analyze at which point they want to find this. They are able to find this trade-off, okay, between the gain of privacy and the loss in utility, because you may get a lot of privacy, like a very good pre-identification risk, but if you lose all the analytical value in the data, it's worthless. So I have a small demo ready. You can see this screen, right? So this is the anonymization. This is the anonymization tool. I skip a few steps ahead so you can see it's faster to show. So basically, you can define a set of operations in here. We have categories for grouping, specific operations for data anonymization, deletion operations for unique identifiers that you have to delete if you want to achieve real privacy, or different clustering techniques through the K-means algorithm, Laplacian or Gaussian noise, and different types of roundings over the numbers. Here I already defined some of them. And the next step is to add the metrics. The tool will ask you, hey, you have some columns that you are not adding any operations to them. What you want to do with them, like keep them as they are or just delete them. I will tell them to keep them. And then the next step is to add a set of privacy and utility metrics. We have a k-anonymity metric, which tells you what's the smallest number of groups that you can create over the anonymized data set. The same metric can be computed also for specific columns. For instance, here I am anonymizing the height and the weight of the user. So I want to know, maybe because they are more critical in my scenario or whatever. So I want to analyze the privacy only for those columns. And also in terms of the loss in utility, I'm computed the mean square error between the original and the new data set. I already ran the analysis, so let's jump to the results. Oh, here, as you can see, the tool will compute operations tree with increased complexity. Like it will start from nothing. This is the original data set, which has a re-identification risk of 100% because we are not touching anything, and there are unique identifiers. So it starts by grouping together some operations, and you can see how in this case it just has a clustering with 3 groups, or here it has a clustering with 3 groups plus some Laplacian noise. But this view is not really meaningful. What it has all the information is this graph view. So in here, we can see how this is helpful to find this trade-off between the privacy and the utility loss. So if we take a look at the re-identification risk, when we are not touching anything in the data set, it is 100% risk that you can identify an individual if you know something about them in this data set. And what is interesting is to find this point where the privacy risk is being reduced, but the utility loss is not as high as in this case, because, for instance, actually it will be like the sweet point in this case, where we get an individual risk. So you can create groups of 259 users, so they are not individuals that can be identified, but the utility loss is not really high. It will be a matter of coming here and selecting. This is work in progress. We're still working on the interface, but you will come here to the tree or just click in here in the graph. And if you choose to anonymize, it will just run this set of operations over the data set and provide you with the anonymized data, which right now I cannot access because I'm not in the VPN of Gradient to access the data set. But yeah, that's it. I hope you like the demo, and I'm available for any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ines, for that. It's again very interesting to see, the way that this work behind the scenes. For someone who is not a technical expert in this type of thing. So, thank you for the presentation. If I may ask, what is like a world well-known use case that this is already in use?
So actually, we are piloting the tool is very useful for health insurance, for instance, because health data sets has to be specially protected. And if you want to extract some analytical value, maybe you are not using your models for making decisions over like life-saving decisions over the patients, but you want to just analyze data from previous patients you had, and maybe you cannot get the informed consent anymore because they are not your patients anymore, they died or whatever. So you have these data sets, and you want to process it and run it through ML model. So under GDPR, you will have to properly anonymize it, and this is one way of ensuring that you are not losing all your data in the process. And also, we are working in the tool is still work in progress, but we are working on the generating like a sheet of a PDF where you can get, hey, this was your risk before you apply these operations, and this is your risk now. So you will have accountability of the process, and you are measuring what you're doing, which is very, very important in regulatory compliance. Yes, and we are also, in this in INFINITECH, another use case, which is I will say more novel. We are working on anonymization of GPS locations, because you can tell a lot of information from. Imagine if you have a data set where the movements of a person from his house to their workplace. If you have the data set is in a small enough place, I can tell you I'm from a small village, and I can tell from you show me 3 like only taking a look at their place, where they live and where they work, you can identify a lot of people with that. So we are working in pilot 11. We are working on data anonymization for GPS locations, and we develop a proprietary.
We lost you, I think, Ines. Yeah. Unfortunately, we've lost Ines. Let's wait a couple of seconds just to see if she's back. Yeah, she left the meeting. I guess an issue with her connectivity, but thank you, Ines, anyway, for this. It's very interesting, and I think there are many applications that we will be using this. And as you said, like for research or for anything that is more like private information, more sensible information, this is definitely the go-to moving forward. So thank you, Ines. We can go ahead with our next speaker. Which is another use case from the INFINITECH project. It's around the personalized portfolio management. And we have with us Mr. Christian Hanley. Hi, Christian.
Hi to you, thanks. So I'll be presenting, and I think Roland will join us a little bit later. He's still in a different meeting, but I'll just go ahead and start sharing my screen.
I'm here already. Hello,
okay,
hi, Roland.
Hi.
Okay, perfect. Can everybody see it?
Yes, if you want to go full screen as well. Perfect. The floor is yours.
All right, perfect. So I'll start talking about the problem that we are trying to solve, then talking a little bit more about our product, the product itself and how it works. and then also looking at the business side and the business analytics, and finishing off with some financials, as we have already gone live with our first client last year. So AI Go, what is it? What is it trying to solve? It's basically an individual private banking-like portfolio advisory, which is based on an AI genetic portfolio algorithm, which should give retail customers, again, private banking-like services, as not a large portion of wealth is currently managed professionally and only available to high net worth individuals. And also in the past few years, the mega trend of mass personalization, where customers, existing customers and future customers want more personalized options. And we have created a solution which caters to this specific thing, taking into account the risk appetite of customers, personal preferences, etc., etc. The investment proposals, the criteria which the clients choose, are optimized via the algorithm, via Privé's algorithm, which then constructs the optimized or optimal portfolio based on the criteria. We have created this journey, of course, within the framework and with the help of the holistic framework of the INFINITECH way. And yeah, our ultimate goal is to bring personalized private banking to the masses. Here you can see two of our marketing slides, which we have developed in the past few weeks or months. Again, going into more detail, how our product actually works. AI Go, again, as I said, produces tailor-made portfolios for any type of investment strategies, which the client can choose. And at the end, we'll present a custom report with a lot of the information, as you can see on the right-hand side on the second slide. You can see the details of the portfolio. How does it compare to similar portfolios, to portfolios generated by the bank or other funds? Also talking about the target market and the market analysis, on the right-hand side, you can see that the growth in this market is very, very significant. Within 5 years, a multifold growth. And we believe, and we can see this in real life, that the future of wealth management is digital, and not just high net worth clients, but every client is demanding digital channels, digital solutions. And it is important for financial institutions in future to develop these sort of things, to not just gain new customers, but also retain their current customers, as the current customers are, of course, also demanding these transformations. Another problem with professionally managed wealth management is that it is very cost intense, and therefore it is currently only available to high net worth individuals who invest a lot of money within the firm. Our solution would, of course, lower this cost significantly, which again would bring this solution to the masses, to more people, and not just high net worth clients. So our technology would improve and increase the efficiency and the serving capabilities, and make it more personalized and also cost effective, which is especially important for our potential clients, which are mostly banks, insurance companies, asset managers, and other financial institutions. Here's just a quick overview of our standing in the market and our competitors. Maybe Roland, you want to mention something here?
Yes, happy to do. I think what we see here in this overview is exactly this, what was already mentioned, this seamless journey, that we really start from the client servicing, starting with, in the end, onboarding a client, know your customer processes, all the regulatory needs you need to fulfill as a participant in the financial services industry, down to the advisory process and the classical portfolio, or let's call it asset management processes. And there you see that we try on this, let's say, full journey to have all functionality available either directly on this platform, which was and is developed, or via partners like we did in Pilot 4, with if some kind of customer identification is needed, then partners like the Duos product from Atos can be put in front of the solution to fulfill any kind of regulatory requirement. And if you go down the different also global competitors, you see that nearly in the end only Expersoft, or also partially then Temenos as one of the biggest backend providers in the world, are fulfilling exactly this full scope, while normally all the other providers have their specialties either in the onboarding processes or in the advisory processes, which is the third column here, or in the portfolio management / asset management processes. And this is a little bit following the, let's call it the mega trend, to set up more services on a platformication structure, so that all the processes you need for different business use cases can be fulfilled on one platform. That's the approach here. And of course, it's not the complete depth of the solution, which may be in some backend providers, especially in portfolio management, more depth than we are. But in the end, for the full process, in many cases, the full depth is also not needed.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead. Yeah.
Moving on. Yeah. Moving on to the business side of things, how does our solution product work? How do we market it? So put simply, there is, in most cases, there is an upfront implementation fee, which is a fee that is due before the product is implemented, or before we basically start working on it. And then there's a recurring fee. Most of these products or projects are multi-year contracts where the recurring fee is paid on a yearly basis. And then sometimes there are also charges based on the volume of the assets under management, depending on if certain goals are reached. There are sometimes there are extra costs, or there's this sort of bonus, if you want to call it like that. Our product is it's not one product, it's different modules. We have over 30 different modules which can be integrated with each other depending on what the client needs, wants, and also what the client currently has already. This is an advantage because it allows us to develop and to onboard these projects or these clients very quickly within a few months. And everything is also cloud-based, which again makes it very scalable, makes the cost much lower, and also makes the scalability much quicker. We suspect, or we assume, that it's about 4 to 5 times more cost effective than if you had hardware or deployment which is based on premises. And then last but not least, it's also very configurable. As I mentioned before, it also depends on what the client already has. We can therefore also cater to different needs or wants, and also integrate these modules with the existing IT architecture that these companies already have. And of course, here also Privé's low-code approach helps us a lot in achieving this. So how does our solution product work, especially from the end client side. The first step is to find out what the risk tolerance of the client is. Sometimes a client will be asked questions. Do they understand the market? Do they understand what is their prior knowledge, previous knowledge on investing itself? And what is the risk appetite? Then in the next step, the client will be asked to input their preferences, in which type of asset classes do they want to invest? Is it more stocks? Is it more bonds? Is it more large funds? Is it blue chip stocks? Whatever. Do they want to invest in certain regions? Do they want to invest in certain areas like gold or water or any certain industry? And another topic which is very relevant nowadays is also the ESG topic, the sustainability topic. How sustainable do they want to invest? Is this an important factor for them or not? Also, these two steps are then integrated into the fund universe of which the client has. And then our AI Go optimizer will combine all of these things and present an optimal portfolio. Of course, the customer will have the option to manually change certain things, giving the customer the freedom of choice and to optimize certain things in the very last process. And then the portfolio optimizer will present the results and compare them to other customer portfolios, other portfolios that the bank has as a standard practice, or also other collection of funds and their results and so on and so forth. And this will then all be output in a data file as a data report. Using the INFINITECH Pentagon, we have achieved compliance basically due to the fact that the clients themselves can choose the preferences, as I mentioned, their risk, the various factors such as ESG regions. Are they willing to risk more to achieve high returns or not? And also, of course, because the client themselves have the option at the end to manually change certain things. The technology readiness level has been achieved as our first clients have gone live with a selected amount of functionalities in 2022. And we are currently active in the German and Austrian market, looking to expand to other European markets and also into Asian markets, which we are currently working on. And then just a quick snippet at the end of our current financial analysis. We assume that our break-even point of this product will be reached after we acquire 4 customers. As you can see in this graph, the columns which are gray have already happened. This is real data. In year 0, you can see the upfront fees, the implementation fees, which I mentioned a few slides ago, which are meant to just cover some of the development costs. And then you can see the revenues, the recurring fees and one-off fees that I also mentioned before in the first 2 years, and our projections for the next 3 to 4 years, which shows that we will break even and achieve a profitable ROI in the end. If you have any questions, thoughts, please ask me or Roland.
Thank you both. Christian, Roland, you've been working on this for the past, I don't know, like 3-4 years now. So I know that it's been a hard work for you, and it's great to see, you know, the results and what is coming after that. So one of my question is, what do you see like as the future of this product? Are there any new features that you would like to add, or, you know, any more paths, maybe slight different paths that you would like to pursue with this?
Yes, of course. I think, let's say, one only amendment into the whole journey, which came up, especially, let's say, in the past 1 or 2 years already, and gets more and more intensive in the next 2-3 years, definitely, is the whole ESG integration, which is right now exactly in the work, because as we're all talking also about data here, ESG is not only a regulatory issue, it's a big data issue, because without data, which financial products fulfill which kind of criteria in terms of ESG and SDG regulations, there you need the data from the product providers or from the product issuers, and then you can build the, let's say, the solution around that, so that customers, can be the banks or their advisors or the end customers, can really select quite precisely which kind of ESG or SDG criteria they want to be have fulfilled in their financial investments, and which should not be recognized at all. I think this is definitely the amendment, and we have already with this first customer, which was our, our friends and family customer, to integrate some ESG expansion. And there we learn already, okay, where the data is still missing, data quality is not good enough, data quality is quite, let's say, a moving target. Yeah, we saw, I think, in the past weeks that many product providers from the investment fund industry downgraded their products because there is already greenwashing discussions about that the providers see their products much more green than they are really, and so on. I think this is exactly a market development we will see in the next, I would say, at least 1 to 2 years, but maybe 3 years. And this shall be integrated here, because I think the market demand is increasing, and every participant in the financial markets, financial services industry need to address this topic. Yeah. And in the longer run, yeah, I think this is then the let's say the ultimate goal of these kind of solutions is, of course, to make it completely self-directed, meaning that every single user, down to the retail user, not only the advisors in banks or with insurance companies, yeah, but every user should be able to define its own, portfolio preferences, yeah, and as much flexible as possible. Yeah? And I think there it's not so much a mathematical topic, yeah, because the math there is not that complicated, but it's more a user journey topic, yeah? Meaning how to explain customers that if they do this, then risk go up or down, or profit or return goes up or down. I think this is more the question, how to make this really so self-explaining that no mistakes or no wrong decisions can be taken. I think this will be the challenge, because this is when we look at the mega trends in this, not only in the financial services industry, but in general with the digitization of India and all industries. Yeah, we have this first mega trend, okay, platformication, yeah, which we try to address to make this journey really in a kind of a one-stop shop solution. But also we have this topic of hyper personalization. This is exactly what we try to do here, that nearly everybody can get a different portfolio based on his real personal preferences, risk appetites, and these kind of things. And the third topic, of course, is then to make it really as a use case with all and every financial services provider they may choose. Yeah, and there definitely then interfaces with banks, maybe with some partners from INFINITECH now, but also with other banks, where they really can build their journey for their customers based on the APIs which have been developed during the project. I think this is then the ultimate goal, we are not there because it's still a complex and also regulated business, meaning we heard today already very much about data protection and GDPR. This is also very complex and regulated, and there we all have the challenge to make this then, or to break this down into easy to use business cases. And I think this is then let's say the next phase of the overall development of these kind of tools. I hope this answers your questions a bit. Yeah.
It does, and it just sounds like it's a process, and many different stakeholders are working on this to find like a proper way. And I don't know if it's gonna be like on a regulatory basis, but everybody's doing things on their own, what they believe is the best way to do that, and hopefully we will have a framework for everybody to work around.
Exactly.
And avoid this type of greenwashing is a huge issue. Perfect. Thank you both for the presentation. If there are any more questions, please feel free to share here. And yeah, we will be discussing this soon. Thank you. So we have one more speaker for today's webinar. We will be discussing with Mr. Dimitris Miltiadou from UPTech around a management system on consent. So hi, Dimitris. Great to have you here with us.
Hi all. Thanks for joining the webinar. Let me, since I see we are a bit late, I'll try to be quick and save the time. Let me quickly share my screen. And okay, if you could please confirm that you can see the slides.
Yes, we can, and they're full screen, so you can go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I will be presenting an approach on the decentralized management of consent in finance applications through our work in the INFINITECH project. So a bit of background why the financial institutions need the customer's consent, although it will also mentioned by many presenters today. It's obvious through the open banking initiative and from the key analysts in the sector that open banking will expand, for example, through a Deloitte report, will expand the traditional banking data flows, placing the customer at its core and control of their banking data, including their personal information. Another point is that the open banking generally refers to the ability of banking customers to authorize third parties to access their bank account data, either to collect account information or to initiate payments, as mentioned by report from KPMG. While another report highlights that when properly implemented in harmony, the two directives, PSD2 and GDPR, enable banks to better protect and serve consumers, to move beyond compliance and to seize new opportunities for growth. In that sense, why consent management is required? Data privacy requirements arise from sharing of personal and sensitive information of customers were involved. So in the case of the banking sector, it is obliged to adhere to both directives, as I said, both PSD2 and GDPR, by finding the proper balance between data sharing that is imposed by PSD2 and GDPR that regulates this data sharing towards innovation and respective data protection. So the proper balance between these two directives is achieved by the consent of the customer of the bank to share their personal and sensitive information to third-party providers. So the need arises for a robust and efficient consent management by the banks. What is in that case consent management? Consent management is the process of managing consent from the customers in order to process their personal data. It enables the tracking, monitoring, and management of the personal data lifecycle, starting from the moment of the opt-in to the data raise in a GDPR-compliant manner. So it actually improves the customer's control over their data. It enables them for the right to provide or withdraw their consent at any point, which allows the authorized party to access their personal data and business information, and it always has an immediate effect, legally speaking. So, in another sense, consent management enables the granular permission consent, a key enabler of trust that is vital to maximize data sharing under the umbrella of the PSD2 directive and to ensure customers that are comfortable enough to share their data with third parties. If we look at the market, there are several digital consent management solutions. However, all of these are handled, besides handling individual privacy, they are performed in many different ways. The majority of them are tailored to the needs of a specific domain, actually. So a first case would be the facilitation of consent management functionalities by a web standard protocol that is, although it's domain agnostic, it lacks of data access auditing, access revocation, and the right to be forgotten that are very crucial and very the main pillars of GDPR. Another part is that other solutions are more let's say, focus on data ownership and data control. However, they are focusing on the health domains, and they are not mature enough in terms of technology, as further research is required on this domain. There is also the solutions under the umbrella of informed consents for research participants via mobile solutions. However, those approaches are, as it's self-explanatory, are focused on mobile applications, and they usually lack support for web applications. And another topic you can see in solutions and let's say domain is of course the Internet of Things domain, with many devices right now in the market. And consent management lifecycle on this case is handled data, but it's very focused on data originating from these devices, and it cannot handle any other data. What is our solution and our approach on this? Where we are providing a blockchain-enabled consent management system that, since traditional technologies fail to become a key enabler of trust, we are all aware of many security and data tampering incidents that are, of course, spread around the news. And our solution is a decentralized and robust blockchain-enabled consent management mechanism that enables the sharing of the customer's consent to exchange and utilize their customer data across different banking institutions. So it enables the financial institutions to effectively manage and share their customer consent in a transparent and ambiguous manner, and is capable of storing the consents and their complete update history with a complete versioning mechanism in a secure and trusted manner. If we look now of the use cases that this application is handling, and we took into consideration while designing and, of course, later on implementing the solution. The first use case is about the creation of a consent. In a nutshell, this includes a flow where the third-party provider initiates a consent request to the consent management system. The bank is notified about this request, and upon a pre-approval, it allows this request to reach its customer. Then the customer is in a position to edit the terms based on their preferences, and then digital sign the consent form, which is at the end, of course, digital signed by the third party before this information is stored securely on the blockchain network that lies underneath. Another case use case that we're handling is that an already established consent might be updated at any point, either being the terms or the time frame that this consent is valid. So the customer can at any point update the terms that later on is digital signed by both parties, and a new version of the consent is introduced and appended on the history of consent that is maintained on the blockchain infrastructure. There is also the other case, of course, that the customer at any point would like to withdraw or invalidate an existing consent. So at any point through the consent management system, the customer can withdraw this consent, and a new version of the consent is also introduced and appended to the complete history maintained in the blockchain infrastructure. Of course, another crucial part is that the use case that the consent management system is offering is the retrieval of the consents in a way that either the customer or the third-party provider that has obtained consents of the customer can retrieve and display the latest consent information, as well as the complete history the consent, so different versions that might occur through updates or invalidation. And the tool is offering different parameters that either the customer or the third party can query and retrieve all this information that is securely stored in the blockchain underneath. Finally, there is a case that we are properly handling that a consent might have, based on its initial creation, a validity period. So this might be a permanent consent till it's invalidated, but has a validity period. And in this case, when an upcoming expiration is about to occur, the customer is informed, and at this point he's given the option to renew or update, let's say, the consent with a new time period, or in case this is not updated and actually the validity period expires, then the system itself updates the consent, invalidates it, and introduce a new version. So from now on, this consent is no longer valid and cannot be as an indication that later on data sharing cannot be, of course, cannot occur. Having said that, now I will initiate a small video that presents the implemented solution, and of course later on I can answer any questions on our solution. So let me kickstart the video.
Hello, this video demonstrates the implemented solution of the consent management system. In this blockchain application, we aim at exploiting the blockchain technology and specifically the permissioned blockchain in order to develop a decentralized and robust consent management mechanism that will enable the sharing of the customer's consent to exchange and utilize their customer data across different banking institutions. In this screen, we can see 3 different windows of the consent management system, one for each connected user with a different role. On the top left window, we can see Financial Institution 01. On the top right window, we can see Financial Institution 02. And finally, in the third window below, we can see a customer. Financial Institution 01 is considered as internal because it has already an established connection with the customer. On the other hand, Financial Institution 02 is considered as external since it aims at acquiring access to the customer's data via fully approved consent. So without further ado, let's create a new consent as user Financial Institution 02, requesting the consent of the customer to access his data. First, we need to open the consent creation module and add the customer's social security number. While the necessary details are filled in the new consent, let us explain to you about the validity period of a consent. With regards to consents and their validity period, 2 different approaches are considered. The first approach provides the option of a once-off consent, in which the validity period of the consent is a predefined period. Once this period expires, the consent is automatically revoked, and new consent is required in order for the requester to be able to access the customer's data. The second approach provides the option of a permanent, or regular consent, that has an infinite validity period and it is only invalidated if the existing consent is withdrawn. Once we have filled in the creation form, we can either save the consent as a draft and submit later, or we can submit it right away, which is what we are going to do for the purpose of this demo. As demonstrated, our consent has been submitted and Financial Institution 01 has been notified in real time via a snack bar message, as well as with an AVBAR notification. In the next step, Financial Institution 01 opens the consent details module, and upon reviewing the requested consent details, it can either reject it or pre-approve it. In the case of pre-approving, the customer is notified that there is a pending consent request for his/her customer data by Financial Institution 02. At this point, the customer user opens the consent module and reviews consent details and request terms. The customer user is given the option to possibly edit some of them before proceeding with the approval via the reviewed button, or the rejection via the reject button. In both cases, financial institution O2 is informed for the update on the consent request status. Finally, in the case of the approval and as the consent request cycle reaches its end, financial institution O2 opens and reviews the possibly changed by the customer consent terms, and if there is an agreement, it proceeds also with the approval and consent activation. After a consent has been finalized, at any time, either the external financial institution or the customer could update its terms. In this demo, the customer opens the update modal and changes the validity period of the consent from permanent to once off. Next, the customer selects the exact date that the specific consent is going to expire. For this demo purposes, let's select March 31, 2022. After submitting the change, the external financial institution is notified in real time and has to review and approve or reject the updated terms in order for the updated consent to be established. So, the external financial institution opens the update modal, reviews the changes related to the consent's validity type, and presses the Approve button. In the previous step, an existing consent has been successfully updated. At this point, we can check the complete consent version by opening the History of Consents modal. The user can have a look at previous versions of the consent. Version number 1 with validity period set to permanent, as well as the updated version of the consent with version 1.1 and validity period once off, which is set to expire at the end of March. On the other hand, at any time either an external financial institution or a customer can withdraw an established consent. For the demo purposes, let's assume that the customer wants to withdraw a consent. So, she selects Withdraw Consent and confirms his or her choice. After withdrawal takes place, the consent status is set to Final. This means that neither of the involved parties can activate this consent again. In this case, we can have a look at the history of the consent again. We can see version 1 with the permanent status, the previously updated consent with version 1.1, and of course the last and final version 2.0. Some other features implemented in the consent management system are a fully functional search bar from which the user can search for a consent using the consent ID, the financial institution or the customer. A user can utilize the different tabs in order to have access to all consents, the active ones or the consents that require his or her action. A financial institution can have access to its customers' information by extending the sidebar and selecting the Customers tab. This concludes the demonstration of the consent management system. Thanks for your attention.
Okay, that was the quick video presentation of our solution. I think now I can answer questions or, of course, any comments.
Perfect. Thank you for this, Dimitris. I just wanted to mention that we have a feedback form that we would like everyone to complete. If they can, it takes less than a minute. I'm gonna share this here on the chat below. It's about consent management tool that we just saw. So Just a couple of questions, I guess. If anyone has anything that they would like to comment here, please do. But yeah, I wanted to see what are the applications that you see. How is this gonna be evolved in the years to come when it comes to the data protection and the topic that we're discussing today? How does this apply to everything around us?
Well, our main, let's say, pillars, as I also mentioned before, was GDPR and also the PSD2 directive, where we need a bridge and a balance between these two directives when we're talking about the banking sector, of course. Banking institution needs to share and open let's say in brackets, their system to share customer data with third parties. Since GDPR cannot allow and strictly regulates this kind of thing, we need a consent. So a system to handle all the consent management is totally required. It will move forward, of course, more regulations might arise and things might change towards the open banking initiative. More things could be binded, let's say, to a consent of since GDPR is here to stay, and of course will be updated eventually at some point, I guess, with more aspects. We probably will need to extend the consent form to have more aspects rather than one now covered through the GDPR, of course, to include more cases that this consent should handle of why do I have a lawful purpose to get your data and process them. Right now, we have a lot of cases that this is needed, but I think that since we will have more advances on the systems and how any third-party company would like to access the data and formulate new services, more things would be requested from a customer in terms of their customer data always.
I see. And do you see this coming like from a governmental perspective, like a party that is somehow in the middle of everyone, so they have to maybe make or put that as part of the regulation, use a system like this? Is it something that could be done, I guess, in combination with the tools that we saw earlier today?
Yeah, actually, this tool stands like a mediator between the involved parties. So just like what I demonstrated, we have a financial institution, the customer of the financial institution, and a third party. And the system is right in the middle. So it facilitates all involved parties to exchange the required information in a secure and trusted manner. So yes, there might be cases that even a government authority utilizes this system, being the mediator in the middle of a financial institution or somewhere else. Usually, at this point, this is addressed to the company that has initially the customer data, in our case, a bank or financial institution, and another third party. But definitely, this picture can expand with more parties being involved, and actually it's on our roadmap to add more features on that to support multiple parties. So it's even the case that two banks, they are sharing this system. They have the proper access policies and, of course, and security measures. And third-party companies came and they exchanged information between these two banks and etc. So this, in general, can be the mediator, and the solution can be expanded to multiple parties. And as I said, this is part of our roadmap in order to, have the next steps and new features introduced in the solution.
Fantastic. So good luck with that. All the best with all these future developments. I think it's a very interesting and keep ongoing changes happening all the time in this area. We wish you all the best for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dimitris. Thank you all. Yes, I think this was this can be the last thing of the discussion. We saw a lot of different practices, use cases, scenarios, tools that can and will be used for the data protection, and how we can make sure that everybody just is compliant, and in the same time making the best for the end users, clients, partners, etc. As that was part of the INFINITECH project. Thank you all for joining. Thank you all speakers for coming here today and sharing your insights and your very interesting use cases with us. I wish you all the best. Have a great day ahead. And if you have any more questions, feel free to share them with us. We will be coming back with a recap of what we discussed today. Thank you all and have a great day.
Thank you all. Have a nice day.